Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, I am Dr. Shabnam Melawat, Associate Professor from the Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. This is my lecture number 13 and it talks about the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. I had earlier talked about the Indian laws with respect to land, air and water, and then the agency which has the power to decide cases in case of disputes or where environmental pollution takes place to take decisions to punish the offender. After this, we have dealt with the forest laws of India, and now I will be dealing with the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. India's wild animals and bird populations are rapidly declining, which is quite concerning because several wild creatures and birds have already gone extinction and others are in the danger of being so. In 1912, the World Birds and Animal Protection Act was wholly outdated. Not only were the state laws that were in place out of date, but are also imposed penalties that were not adequate for the offences. There is a perceived urgent need to introduce comprehensive regulations to preserve the wildlife, animals and the birds. Unfortunately, the central government lacked the authority to enact a law because the subject matter belonged to entry 20 of the state list in the 7th schedule. Under Article 252 of the Constitution, resolutions authorizing Parliament to enact a required legislation on the subject matter were passed by the state. Legislatures of Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Gujarat, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Manipur, Punjab, Rajasthan, UP and West Bengal. Consequently, the Wildlife Protection Act bill was presented in the Parliament, and on September 9, 1972, after passing by both houses of the Parliament, the President of India gave his assent. This act protects wild animals, birds and plants as well as items related, incidental or supplementary to them. The act created lists of plant and animal species that were to be protected. It also declared it illegal to kill or harvest these species. In the case of State of Bihar versus Murad Ali Khan, the Supreme Court observed that because wildlife laws have a long history, the legislature and the court must work together to safeguard wildlife. The court believes that irreversible damage would result from the ecological imbalances and environmental degradation that had reached a critical stage, and the action needed was to be done quickly. The history of wildlife protection law in India relates back to the British rule in India. The first of these laws, known as the Wild Birds Protection Act 1887, was passed by the British Indian government. The goal of this law was to make it illegal to own or sell certain wild birds that were either killed or captured during a nesting session. In 1912, a second statute, which was the World Birds and Animal Protection Act, was passed, and it was amended in the year 1935. The preservation of animals and birds were not given importance during the British Raj. The question of safeguarding nature and keeping some species from going extinct didn't come to light until the 1960s and the early 70s. India enacted the Wildlife Protection Act. We have our constitutional law which provides backing to all laws in India and to the fundamental rights which provides backing to the environmental law in India. The fundamental rights of Article 19(1)(g) and Article 21, where Article 19(1)(g) is subject to certain restrictions if it encroaches the right to life. Then comes the fundamental duties, which are Article 47, 48 and 51(a)(g), and then the right to constitutional remedies, which are Article 32 and 226. The fundamental duties were added by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act in the year 1976. Defining aspects under the Act when it was framed was animals. The definition of animals is very important, which includes amphibians, birds, mammals, reptiles and their young, and also includes in the cases of birds and reptiles their eggs, which means those which are existing and those which are about to come into this world as animals are to be protected. Animal article means an article made from any captive animal or wild animal other than the vermin, and includes an article or object in which the whole or any part of that animal has been used, and ivory imported into India and an article made therefrom. Under Article 2, Subclause 5, the captive animal means any animal which is specified in Schedule 1 or Schedule 2, which is captured or kept or bred in captivity. Circus means an establishment where stationary or mobile are where animals are kept or used wholly or mainly to perform tricks or maneuvers. Collector means the chief officer in charge of the revenue administration of a district or any other officer not below the rank of a deputy collector, as may be appointed by the state government under section 18B in this behalf. The commencement of this act. The state means commencement of that act in that state. Provision of this act means the commencement of that provision in the concerned state. More important is the word dealer. A dealer is a person in relation to any captive animal, animal article, trophy, uncured trophy, meat or specified plant, which means a person who carries on the business of buying or selling any such animal or article, and includes a person who undertakes business in any single transaction. The director means the director of wildlife preservation under clause A of subsection 1 of section 3. Forest officer means a person who is appointed as the forest officer under the Indian Forest Act or any other act in force. Forest produce has the same meaning as that given under the Indian Forest Act. Government property is referred to property of the government. Habitat includes land, water, vegetation, which is the natural home of any wild animal or specified plant. Hunting means, with its grammatical variations and expressions, it includes killing or poisonous of any wild animal or a captive animal and every attempt to do so. The capturing, the coursing, the snaring, the trapping, driving or baiting any wildlife animal or a captive animal and every attempt to do so for the purpose of injuring or destroying any or taking any part of him or his body. In the case of wild birds or reptiles, damaging the eggs of such birds or reptiles or disturbing the eggs or nests of such birds or reptiles. So, the word hunting is specifically defined to include what is legal and what is illegal. Invasive alien species means a species of plant or animal which is not native to India and whose introduction or spread may threaten or adversely impact wildlife of its habitat. The land includes canals, creeks, water channels, reservoirs, rivers, streams, lakes, artificial or natural, marshes and wetlands, and also includes boulders and rocks. So, the license means a license granted under this act. Then comes livestock. It means the farm animals, buffaloes, bulls, bullocks, camels, and likewise the list which has been enumerated here. The manufacturer means a person who manufactures articles from any animal or plant specified in Schedule 12 as the case may be. Meat means the blood, the bones, the sinew, the eggs, shell or cast space, fat and flesh with or without the skin, whether raw or cooked, of any wild animal or captive animal other than the vermin. A national board for wildlife which is established would be a national board under section 5A. A national park means a declared area by the respective laws of our country. Notification is notification in the official Gazette of India, otherwise it is not considered a notification. Permit means a permit granted under the act. Then the word person. This includes any individual, a firm or a company, authority, association of persons or individuals, whether incorporated or not. Protected area means a national park, a sanctuary, a conservation reserve or a community reserve notified under the law. The recognized zoo means a zoo recognized under section 38H. Reserved forest means a forest which is declared to be reserved by the state government under section 20 of the Indian Forest Act or declared to be such. Sanctuary means an area declared as a sanctuary by notification under the provisions of chapter 4 and also includes a deemed sanctuary under section 66. Specified plant means a specific plants which has been specified under schedule 3. Taxidermy, which is in tune with the international laws, is grammatical variations and cognate expressions, which means curing, preparation or preservation or mounting of trophies belonging to the wildlife. Territorial waters will have the same meaning as under the international law, which is territorial waters, continental shelf, exclusive economic zone and other maritime zones Act 1976. Trophy means, now trophy is very important because it involves the parts of wildlife animals. So, it means the whole or any part of any captive animal or wild animal other than vermin which is kept or preserved by artificial or natural means and includes rugs, skins, specimens of such animals mounted in whole or in part in the process of taxidermy, antlet, bone, carapace, shell, horn, rhinoceros horn, hair, feather, nail, tooth, tusk, musk, eggs, nests and honeycomb. The definition of trophy is important to catch people who are involved in their dealings and to define whether that act is legal or illegal. Uncured trophy means the whole or any part of any captive animal other than vermin which is not undergone a process of taxidermy and includes a freshly killed animal, ambergris, musk and other animal products. Vehicle means the means by which is used for conveyance or movement on land, water, air and includes a buffalo, bull, bullock, camel, donkey, elephant, horse and mule. Weapon means ammunition, bows and arrows, explosives, firearms, hooks, knives, nets, poisons, snares and traps or any instrument which is capable of anesthetizing, decoying, destroying, injuring or killing an animal. Wild animal is referred to under the wildlife under the animals specified under schedule 1 or schedule 2 and found wild in the nature. Wildlife means any animal, aquatic or land vegetation which forms a part of any habitat and the warden is a person who is appointed for this means for the protection of wildlife. Then comes the definition of zoo. It means the establishment, whether stationary or mobile. Any captive animals are kept for exhibiting to the public or ex situ conservation and includes a circus and offbeat of exhibit facilities such as rescue centers and conservation breeding centers, but does not include an establishment of a licensed dealer in captive animals. The features of the Act. This Act establishes a network of ecologically important protected areas in addition to protecting certain specified animals, birds and plant species. It also entails on India the responsibilities and powers of the wildlife wardens and the advisory boards. It helps us to become a part of the international convention, which is Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, which is a multinational convention adopted to save plants and animals that are in the danger of extinction. It was adopted following a meeting of the IUCN members and also referred to as the Washington Convention. A thorough inventory of the nation's endangered wildlife was created for the first time, and the Act makes it illegal to hunt, threaten or endanger animals. Our precious lion and the precious tiger being one of those species which are considered under CITES as protection of the wildlife. Then comes the provisions of the Act ban the trading of scheduled animals. Certain wildlife species may only be sold, transferred or owned with a license according to the Act. It permits the creation of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, etc. and the provisions of the Act make it possible to establish a central zoo authority in 1992, which is the main body for regulating the zoos in India. which hold wildlife animals to be displayed to the public. The Act creates schedules to provide different levels of protection to different groups of flora and animals. There is a complete protection for the subjects mentioned in Schedule 1 and Schedule 2, and the harshest punishments are prescribed for violators of these schedules. The schedule contains a list of species that may be hunted and those which may not be. Under this Act, the National Board for Wildlife has been established as a statutory body headed by the Prime Minister of India. The advisory body provides recommendation on matters of wildlife conservation in India to the central government. It is also the supreme body for examining and approving initiatives about national parks, sanctuaries and wildlife. The board's main duty is to encourage growth, preservation, conservation of forests and wildlife in India. For the protection of the tiger, the Act provides for establishment of a National Tiger Conservation Authority. It is a statutory authority by the Ministry of Environment and Forests and Climate Change and carries out the Act's specified functions in addition to having general supervisory and coordination functions. The goal is to improve India's tiger conservation efforts. It bestows legal authority on the Project Tiger, which was initiated in 1973 to protect the tiger. Authorities which are to be appointed or constituted under the Act are, there should be a director and other officers under Section 3 of the Act. It talks about the central government who shall appoint an officer or a director of wildlife preservation and such officers and employees which are or may be necessary. In the performance of their duties and exercise of their powers by or under the Act, the director shall give subject to such general or specific directions as the central government may from time to time give. The officers and other employees appointed under this section shall be required to assist the director, the wildlife warden, the honorary wildlife warden and other officers and employees are appointed who shall be subordinate to the chief wildlife warden. The appointment of wildlife warden and other officers. The state government for the purposes of this Act may appoint a wildlife warden, wildlife wardens, honorary wildlife wardens and such officers and employees as may be necessary. Then the power to delegate and constitution of the board for the purposes of protecting the wildlife are Section 5. The director may, with the previous approval of the central government, in writing delegate all powers and duties under this Act to any officer subordinate to him. If any, with such conditions, the warden may, with the previous approval of the central government by order in writing, delegate all or any powers and duties except those under clause A of subsection 1 of section 11 to any officer subordinate to him subject to such conditions as may be specified in that order. Subject to the general or specific directions given or conditions imposed by the director or the chief wildlife warden, any person who is authorized by the director or the wildlife warden to exercise powers may exercise those powers in the same manner which shall have the same effect as conferring the person directly those powers under the Act and not by way of delegation. Section 5A talks about the constitution of a National Board for Wildlife, which is a statutory organization under the provisions. It serves as an apex body for the review of all wildlife related matters and approval of projects in and around national parks and sanctuaries. It is also an advisory body that offers advice to the central government on issues of wildlife conservation in India, an apex body to review and approve matters related to wildlife, projects of national parks, sanctuaries, and its main function of the board is to promote conservation and development of wildlife and forests. The members of the board. Here is a list of members who may be appointed as members of the board, like the Prime Minister as its chairperson, Minister in charge of forests and wildlife as the vice chairperson, 3 members of the Parliament who are from the House of People, Council of States, and a member from the Niti Aayog in charge of environment, forests and climate change. 5 persons to represent the non-governmental organizations by the central government, Secretary of the Government of India, Chief of the Army Staff, Secretary to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Secretary to the Ministry of Tribal Welfare, Director General of the Forests and a Ministry of Department under the central government for forests and wildlife. And likewise, a list has been provided by me to consider who will be the persons who are members of the board. Then comes a standing committee and functions of the national board. The national board may in its discretion constitute a standing committee for the purpose of exercising powers and performing duties which may be delegated to the committee by the national board. The standing committee shall consist of a vice chairperson, the member secretary, and not more than 10 members to be nominated by the vice chairperson from amongst the members of the national board. The national board may constitute committees, subcommittees, or study groups, whatever is required and is necessary from time to time in proper discharge of the functions assigned by it. What are the functions of the National Board? Under Section 5C, it is stated, it is the duty of the National Board to promote conservation and development of wildlife and forests and take such measures as it thinks fit. Without prejudice to the foregoing provisions, measures may provide for framing policies advising the government on the ways and means of promoting wildlife conservation, controlling the poaching and the illegal trade of wildlife and its products, making recommendations on setting up on management of national parks, sanctuaries and other protected areas relating to restriction of activities in these areas, carrying out or causing to be carried out the impact assessment of various projects and activities on the wildlife and their natural habitats, reviewing from time to time the progress in the field of wildlife conservation in the country and suggesting means for improvement, and preparing and publishing status reports at least once in 2 years on the wildlife in our country. Then comes the constitution of a state board for wildlife. The state government also within a period of 6 months from the commencement of this act, the Wildlife Protection Amendment Act 2002 called for constitution of a state board for wildlife consisting of members with the chief minister and its chairperson and similar authorities at the state level. There also a standing committee of board may be established for exercising such powers and functions and duties as is delegated to it by the board. The committees shall consist of the vice chairperson, the members, and not more than 10 members to be nominated by the chairperson from members of the board. They may constitute committees, subcommittees, or study groups from time to time to discharge the functions of the board. Procedure, duties and hunting of wild animals. The procedure to be followed by the board is, it shall meet twice a year at a place as the state government may direct. It may regulate its own procedures. No act or proceeding of the board shall be invalid for the reason of existence of any vacancy in the board. The duties of the board are, it shall advise the state government on the selection and management of areas declared as protected areas. It shall formulate policies for protection and conservation of wildlife and specified plants. It shall relate to the amendment of any schedule, measures to be taken for harmonizing the needs of the tribals and other dwellers of the forests with protection and conservation of wildlife, any other matter which is connected to the protection of wildlife which may be referred by the state government. There is then an absolute ban on hunting. Section 9 talks about the prohibition of hunting. No person shall hunt any wild animals specified in 7, Schedule 1 and 2, except as provided under Section 11 and Section 12. Section 10 talks about maintenance of records of wild animals killed or captured, which is omitted by the Amendment Act of 1991. Then hunting of wild animals is only permitted in certain special cases where they are themselves a threat to life or a disease, they have been overtaken by a disease or their recovery is beyond measure and they cannot be recovered. So, where such animals are there, they are dangerous to human life, they have become a disablement or they are diseased or there is a recovery and cannot be captured, tranquilized or translocated without assessment or prior permission. The grant of permit for special purposes, where special permissions need to be taken for special activities there, for educational purposes, for scientific research, for scientific management. For the purpose of scientific management means translocation of any wild animals, population management of wild animals without killing, poisoning or destroying them, collection of specimens for recognized zoos subject to the permission under 38(1), for museums and similar institutions, derivation, collection or preparation of snake venom for manufacturing of life-saving drugs, and no permit shall be granted for any wild animal specified in Schedule 1 except for the prior permission of the central government, or any other wild animal except with the prior permission of the state government, for derivation, collection or preparation of snake venom for the manufacturing of life-saving drugs. Then comes protection of specified plants. Protection of specified plants may be taken up by, there is a prohibition of picking, uprooting of specified plants, plants which are existing for the purpose of medicinal value, they hold a special importance, or they hold certain special values, or they are extinct or they are rare, cannot be used or taken away by individual acts. They need to be taking special permissions for removal or plucking or doing any activity in relation to the said plant. So, it grants for specific purposes. There is cultivation of specified plants without license is prohibited. Dealing in specified plants without license is also prohibited. There is declaration of the stock needs to be given. Possession of plants by license only can be made out, and plants otherwise are said to be the government property, where if any unidentified plant comes up, the government can claim rights over the said plant. Protected areas under the Act or the sanctuaries. Section 18 of the Wildlife Act talks about sanctuary declarations. The state government may declare its intention to create a region other than the areas comprised of reserved forests or territorial waters as a sanctuary, as it considers such areas to be sufficient of ecological, floral, faunal or zoological value to protect and safeguard species of such areas. State governments may declare sanctuaries through notifications, and declaring a wildlife sanctuary does not require a law. 18B of the Act says that the state government shall appoint an officer to act as a collector under the Act, that within 90 days of coming into force of the Wildlife Amendment Act 2002 or within 30 days from the issue of notification, to inquire into and determine the existence, nature and extent of rights of any person in or over the land comprised within the limits of the sanctuary, which may be notified under subsection 1 of section 18. Sections 19 to 25 specify the duties that must be carried out by the collector. Other officers may exercise and carry out this authority in accordance with the directions which may be given. Section 23 outlines the collector's authority. The collector has the authority to access any land, survey, mark boundaries, give any officer permission to do the same. A civil court has the same authority for the same purpose. Section 24 addresses the acquisition of rights, and such rights are as follows. Anybody who claims a right in or over any land mentioned in section 19 may have their claim accepted or rejected in whole or in part by the collector through an order. If a claim is accepted in full or in part, the collector will have the option of either removing that land from the proposed sanctuary boundaries or moving forward with the acquisition of the land, barring a deal between the landowner, the holder and the government, in which the owner agrees to cede ownership of the land to the government in exchange for payment of compensation in accordance with the right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013, after consulting the Wildlife Chief Warden. Section 25 addresses the acquisition proceedings. For acquiring such land, the collector takes an action and proceedings. It will carry out the right to fair compensation and transparency in the land acquisition. For acquiring such land, the claimant shall consider to be an interested person and appearing before him in pursuance of the notice served under section 21 of the Act. The collector, with the consent of the claimant of the court, may award compensation in land or money in whole or in part. In the stoppage of a public way or common pasture, the collector, with the previous sanction of the state government, provides an alternate way for that public stoppage. Acquisition made under this land shall be deemed as the acquisition for a public purpose only and not for private ownership. Section 25A, time limit for completion of acquisition provides for time limit for completion of these acquisition proceedings. Section 26 deals with the delegation of collector's powers, and 26A deals with the declaration of an area as a sanctuary. The restriction on entry in the sanctuary. Section 27 pertains to access restrictions. No other person except for a public servant on duty who has been permitted by the wildlife chief warden or an authorized officer to reside within the limits of the sanctuary has a right over immovable property within the limits. A person passing through the sanctuary along a public way, dependents of the person of the said person shall enter or reside in the sanctuary except and in accordance with the conditions of the permit which has been granted. Section 28 deals with that every person who resides in the sanctuary is bound to prevent the commission in the sanctuary an offence under the Act. There is no reason that such offence has been committed to help in discovering and arresting the offender, to report the death of any animal and to safeguard its remains until the wildlife warden or authorized officer takes charge, to extinguish any fire in the sanctuary of which he has knowledge or information, or to prevent from spreading any lawful means in his power any fire within the vicinity of such sanctuary, to assist the officers of wildlife for preventing the commission of offences or investigation of any such offence, and he shall intend to cause damage to any, and no person with intent to cause damage to any boundary mark of a sanctuary or cause wrongful gain as defined under the IPC, alter, destroy, move or deface such boundary marks. No person shall tease or molest any animal or litter the grounds of a sanctuary. Grant of permit. Section 28 lays down provisions with reference to the grant of a permit. Authorization given under Section 28, it permits only to be granted for the following purposes such as research or examine wildlife photography, scientific research, tourism, transaction of lawful business with any person residing in the sanctuary. A permit to enter reside shall be issued subject to terms and conditions and a fee to be paid which will be prescribed previously. Destruction in a sanctuary prohibited without a permit. The destruction is forbidden without a permit in a sanctuary which is covered by Section 29. It states that no one is allowed to destroy any wildlife, forest products from a sanctuary or interfere with the flow of water in and out of the sanctuary, to stop or improve the flow of water. Permission cannot be granted unless the state government is satisfied in consultation with the national board that such removal of wildlife from the sanctuary or change in the flow of water in or outside the sanctuary is necessary for the improvement and better management of wildlife and authorizes the issue of such permit. This section prohibits starting a fire under Section 30. It states that no one is allowed to start a fire or allow one to burn there long enough to endanger the sanctuary. Prohibition related to prohibition of entry with fire weapons, ban on the use of injurious substances and control of sanctuaries. The ban on firearms inside the refuge is covered under Section 31, where no person will be allowed to enter with a weapon without the written authorization from a designated authority, usually the wildlife warden, and there is prohibition on using harmful substances within the sanctuary, which is covered under Section 32. It states that no one is allowed to use explosives, chemicals, any materials which would harm the sanctuary's wild creatures. Administration of these sanctuaries is covered under Section 33. The chief wildlife warden will have the authority to see, manage and care for these sanctuaries, that it can build bridges, buildings, roads, gates, fences and other things that are required for the same. It shall take steps as will ensure the security of the wild animals in the sanctuary and preservation of the sanctuary and wildlife animals therein, take such measures as he may consider necessary for the improvement of their habitats, which also involves immunization of the livestock, an advisory committee to be set up, registration of persons who are possessed with firearms, whether to allow those people to enter or not allow them to enter. National parks. National parks are those areas that are set up by the government to conserve the natural environment. Section 35 to 36 deals with declaration and management of conserved areas, conservation reserve management committee to be established, declaration and management of community reserve and community reserve management committee to exist. It has more restrictions as compared to a wildlife sanctuary. Parks are to be declared by the government by notification. No alteration of boundary of a national park shall be made except on a resolution passed by the state legislature. Objective of a national park is to protect the natural environment of the area and the biodiversity conservation. Landscape, fauna, flora are present in their natural state in the national parks. Their boundaries are fixed and defined, and no human activities are allowed in such areas. These areas are set up by the government to conserve the natural environment. They have more restrictions in comparison to the wildlife sanctuary. The objective is to protect the natural environment of the area and biodiversity conservation. And section 37 relates to closed areas which have been declared not to exist anymore. So, the declaration of national parks and sanctuaries are to be made by the government. Under section 35, it says national parks are to be declared. Areas designated as national park if it is ecologically significant, possesses wildlife, flora or other benefits related to wildlife. It may constitute an act to protect the wildlife. An area that is designated as a national park must undergo a land inquiry and determination of a process. It must bring lives, except for the person bringing livestock for the animal, nobody else is allowed inside. All rights to the land would be included in national parks belong to the state government. Boundaries of the territory inside the national park should be specified in a notice released by the state government, and the central government's authority to designate regions as national parks is outlined in section 38. Then comes the zoos. There is a central zoo authority which is established under 38A. The central government constitutes a body to be known as the Central Zoo Authority. It consists of a chairperson and a number of members not exceeding 10 and a member secretary to be appointed. The terms and conditions of the services of such chairperson and members, that is, they shall hold office for a period not exceeding 3 years. They may in writing resign from their office, or they may be removed in case they become insolvent, get convicted, are sentenced to imprisonment, become of unsound mind, refuse to act or are incapable of acting, without obtaining leave of absence if they are absent for 3 consecutive meetings. In the opinion of the central government, here the person has abused his position, then he may be removed from the said seat. Functions of the authority: they have specified standards for housing, upkeeping and veterinary care of the animals in the zoo. They evaluate and assess the functioning of the zoo with certain standards and norms. They can be recognized or de-recognized zoos. They may identify endangered species of wild animals for the purpose of captive breeding and assigning responsibility of a zoo. They coordinate the acquisition, exchange and loaning of animals for breeding purposes. They ensure maintenance of books of endangered animals, identifying priorities and themes, coordinating training of zoo personnel, research in captive breeding, technical and other assistance for the management and development on scientific lines of such zoos, and perform such other persons as may be necessary. The central authority and the recognition of the zoos. There is a procedure which is to be regulated by the authority. The grants and loans to the authority and constitution of a fund needs to be there. And annual reports need to be present. An annual report and an audit report are to be prepared, which will be laid before both houses of the parliament. Recognition of the zoos is there, acquisition of animals by the zoo may be notified, and prohibition of teasing and other illegal activities in a zoo are prohibited. Then comes the main National Tiger Conservation Authority, or the NTCA Chapter 4B. It defines that there will be an authority which will be the National Tiger Conservation Authority. There will be a steering committee constituted, a foundation which is established. The Tiger Reserve State means a state having a tiger reserve may be notified. This authority shall be a body which is constituted by the central government as the National Tiger Conservation Authority to exercise powers and to perform functions which are assigned. It shall be, the members may be the Minister in charge of Ministry of Environment and Forests, the Minister of State in Environment and Forests, Vice Chairperson, 3 members of the Parliament to be elected from the House of the People and the Council of the State, 8 experts who are professionals in their fields, and welfare of the people living in a tiger reserve, and 2 shall be the field of the tribal development and areas which are notified. Then the Secretary, Minister of Environment and Forest, DG, and there is a list of people who are there who shall be members of this authority. Powers and functions of the authority. This is to firstly to approve a plan for working, to evaluate and assess aspects of sustainable ecology and disallow ecologically unsustainable land use such as mining, industry and other projects within the tiger reserves, lay down normative standards for tourist activities, provide for management and measure for addressing conflicts of men and wild animals, to provide for management focus, coexistence in forest areas of the national parks, sanctuaries or tiger reserves in the working plan code, provide information for protectionist measures. There would be its natural prey species, status of habitats, disease surveillance, mortality, survey, patrolling and reports. Approve coordination of research and monitoring of tiger and their co-predators. The tiger reserve areas linking one protected area to another. They shall facilitate and support the tiger reserve management of the state in a similar manner. They will facilitate ongoing capacity building program for skill development of officers and staff of these tiger reserves. They shall perform such functions to carry out for the purpose of conservation of tigers and their natural habitats, and they have powers and they will perform their functions under the directions which are issued in writing to any persons, officers or authorities, and shall be bound to comply with those directions, if provided that no direction interferes with or affects the rights of the local people, particularly the scheduled tribes. The Tiger Authority, there is a procedure which is regulated. Grants and loans are given for its preservation and it constitutes a fund. There shall be accounts and there shall be audits which are carried out of the authority. An annual report to be prepared. Annual report and the audit report are to be placed before the Parliament. A constitution of a steering committee, a constitution of a tiger conservation plan, alteration and denotification of tiger reserves, establishment of a tiger conservation foundation, and provisions of chapters in addition to provisions related to sanctuaries and national parks. The Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, it is the constitution of a bureau where they have certain powers and functions to counter, survey and to protect these wildlife from any illegal activities or illegal persons who might be trying to do trophy hunting or uncured hunting of these wild animals. The trade or commerce in these wildlife animals is prohibited. Whatever has been carried out before the enactment of the law, those animals or their parts would be government property and they would be declared by the government. There might be immunity in certain cases and there might be inquiries and preparation of inventories. There is a certificate of ownership in case a person owns a particular product in relation to a animal product. Surrender of captive animals or animal articles, regulation of transfer of animal, Dealing in trophy and animal articles without a license is prohibited. There might be suspension or cancellation of licenses. They will purchase, maintain records, impose restrictions, and purchase of captive animal cannot be done without a license which is granted for the same. Then there is absolute prohibition or trade or commerce in trophies or animal articles derived from certain animals. So, it declares, there is a declaration by the dealers who shall declare that they have certain trophies or products or parts of wild animals, and they are derived from the scheduled list, whereby they should not be endangered, and if they have certain articles, then they will be declared and kept as a government property. Regulation of international trade in endangered species of the wild fauna and flora. So, it involves the establishment of an authority. There will be a scientific authority, there will be directions given by the central government, international trade in the scheduled specimen thereof. There are conditions for scheduled specimen, import, export, and conditions for introduction of scheduled specimens. The transfer and breeding of certain wildlife may be permitted. Species and specified species to be government property, and application of provisions should be in respect of Schedule 1, 2 and 4 of the Act. Where there is prevention and detection of offences, there is a power of the officers to enter, search, arrest and detain. The penalties prescribed are that without a license or a permit, one cannot commit any offence within these areas where wildlife is present. If they do so, they will be imprisoned with a imprisonment which may be for 3 years, or a fine which may go up to 1 lakh rupees or both, and conditions where bail may not be granted. Attempts and abetment, there is a power to compound offences, there is cognizance of offences, and in case offences are committed by the companies, the person who gave directions will be responsible for the same. Forfeiture of property derived from illegal hunting and trading. These are, there is prohibition of illegally acquired property, there is a competent authority. There is seizure or freezing of illegally acquired property, notice of forfeiture of property. Burden of proof shall lie on the person to show how he holds that property, and there is a procedure in relation to trust properties. There is a bar of jurisdiction of the trial when it takes place, will not be tried by any other court. There is a competent authority in an appellate tribunal to have powers of the civil courts. There is power to take possession, rectification of mistakes, finding under other laws not conclusive proceedings. There will be protection of action which is taken in good faith. There is a regulation and prohibition of import and export of wild animals. The central government has the power to make rules with respect to the whole of the country. The state government has the power to make rules with respect to the respective states, and rights of scheduled tribes specifically need to be protected. The schedules, there are 4 schedules given under the Act, where it talks about what animals require what kind of protection under the law. Then comes the cases under this Act. One of the important cases which was observed by the Supreme Court was in Swetav Kumar versus Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change and others, where it stated that individuals who have made a declaration of ownership of exotic live species following the advisory issued by the Ministry of Environment and Forests are immune from prosecution. It has been held that advisory was an amnesty scheme and declarants are immune from prosecution. The same would mean that declarants are immune from prosecution or action under any future laws and amendments incorporated in the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Then came the Silent Valley case, which is an unreported case where they talked about building of a dam in that area, but the persons and the scheduled tribes stopped the government from building a dam, stating that it has exclusive wildlife and exclusive area which is covered by forests. So, those areas cannot be taken away by the government in a public aspect. The Goa Foundation case versus Konkan Railway Construction Corporation, they talked about the fragile nature of the coastal areas when activity is carried out or wildlife needs to be protected and the ecosystems need to be protected. There, the Goa Foundation laid down foundations for bringing about a legislation called the CRZ notification, but it was specifically talked about that ecosystems should be protected and preserved, and the species within them may be endangered and may be endangered and cannot be brought back once they perish. Then comes the case of T.N. Godavarman Tirmulkud versus Union of India. Then there is a famous case of Sansar Chand versus State of Rajasthan. It deals with the fact that India is rich in flora and fauna, and wild animals have become extinct, that is the cheetah and others are on the brink of extinction. So we are once teeming with the wildlife has become devoid, and many sanctuaries and parks are empty of animals and birds. The Sariska Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan and the Panna Tiger Reserve in Madhya Pradesh today have absolutely low population of tigers. The wildlife poaching which takes place, which yields enormous profits by exports to China and other countries, is the reason where it is responsible for the same. The poaching of tigers for traditional Chinese medicine. Tigers and leopards are poached for their skins, bones and other products which fetch high prices in other countries. The illegal trade is more organized and widespread and in the hands of ruthless operators who have top-level patronage. The poachers are paid only pittance, with huge profits being made by organized gangs. The Interpol says that trade in illegal wildlife is worth about 20 billion a year, and India is now a major source market for this trade. The demand for wildlife product comes from outside the country, and there are thousands of tigers in India according to the survey, but in the year 2008, only 1411 tigers were left. There is no market for the skins or bones of tigers and leopards within India. Evidence points that tigers and leopards poached in the Indian wilderness are smuggled across the borders and by poachers, and it is to bear in mind that one is dealing with the transnational organized crime. This represents a link with the larger criminal network that stretches across borders, with the poacher in case a poor tribal and a skilled hunter. They are able to supply orders placed by the trader in large city centers, and they are wealthy and they are influential people, where they manage to smuggle these species across the border to other countries. The Wildlife Protection Act, which talks about rules and regulation and laws related to protection of wildlife, is constituted under the International Convention of CITES. And in the case of Sansar Chand, it is a similar case where he was the poacher, and he stated that the demand was made by an external person who was a dealer in the same, but he was so highly placed that no relationship could be shown to exist between the two. Although all evidence pointed towards the person, but Sansar Chand specifically named that person as the main dealer. It was only Sansar Chand who was found guilty of the act, and the others were let off because of absence of evidence of the same for trial purposes, that they could not find any connections to the person to whom he was found with wildlife animal skins. So there is the confessions which have been made by Sansar Chand were eye-catching, and they led to opening of the eyes of people to show how smuggling and how interconnection smuggling takes place on an international organized crime level. The other is the case of T.N. Godavarman Tirmulkud versus Union of India, where in 2005 it talked about protection of wildlife, protection of forests and preservation in a way that our extinct species do not go into absolute extinction, and there is a need to protect them from perishing. After Sansar Chand's case, the vigilance has been increased, but it remains to be seen that how wildlife needs to be protected. Another case which relates to the same is the Center for Environmental Law WWF 1 versus Union of India. This was an important case which related to that there was enough research done by the biologists at the Gir forest in the state of Gujarat in 1986. Those studies provide data which would help for better management of the Gir forest and enhance all prospect for long-term conservation of lions at the Gir forest, a single habitat of the Asiatic lion in the world. The data collected by the biologists highlighted the necessity of a second natural habitat. So they identified the areas where there was a workshop which was held in Gujarat, and they considered alternative sites for transporting the Asiatic lions into other natural habitats. These were referred to as the Dara Jawahar Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary in Rajasthan, the Sita Mata Wildlife Sanctuary in Rajasthan, and the Kuno Wildlife Sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh. The Research Advisory Committee recognized the need for a prior survey to assess those potential sites, and after surveys are conducted in these areas, they would be allowed to transport these Asiatic lions since their number had grown, and for their better protection and preservation in other areas which would be identified. So overall, it is the working of all agencies, the government agencies and the people who need to take responsibility for their protection before it leads to absolute extinction. Thank you.
Hello, good morning everybody. I am Raghunandan Sengupta. So, I will just give you a very brief excitement area of finance, which is quantitative finance, and that has a huge market starting around about 10 years back, and it is exploding exponentially. So, what do we mean by quantitative finance? Quantitative finance is actually the application of different mathematical and statistical techniques in the area of financial markets, be it say for example derivative pricing, be it in the area of say for example portfolio management, be it in the area of asset liability management, be it in the area of portfolio management. We see that the application has exploded in such a way that there is a huge opportunity for people who have a quantitative background in mathematics and statistics. They can utilize those in the area of finance, but obviously with some prior knowledge of finance as a subject. Now, when we say about quantitative finance, as I said, it is an area of applied mathematics and statistics applied in financial markets. Use of different areas, if somebody is interested to know, we have stochastic calculus, we have derivative pricing, we have operation research, we have quantitative techniques like differential equations, stochastic calculus, time series, and they are heavily used in the area of quantitative finance as I mentioned. Now, we all know that in 1997 the Nobel Prize in Economics, so it is basically the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics was given to the work of Merton and Scholz in the area of derivative pricing, and after that there has been exponential increase in the area of quantitative techniques in quantitative finance and in the area of different type of derivative pricing. With the advent, moreover with the advent of high-ended and sophisticated computing data, big data has come in a very big way, where application areas starting from computing, from different type of algorithm design have been taken up in such a big way that nowadays at least we are able to understand that how high frequency data algorithm trading can be utilize using the concept of quantitative finance in the area of finance as such. But there is a flip side also, obviously when there is a huge amount of development. So, obviously due to some regulation errors or something, there has been some pitfalls, which I think is should be a bullet point for people who are really interested to take up quantitative finance. They should be aware. So, consider the financial crisis in 2008 and later on, and we are seeing different banks are failing, different financial institutions are facing a problem, countries are facing a problem like in Europe, in USA. So, what should be done? So, the main thing is that even if you know the technique is best for people who are investors, who are private players, organizations like banks, governments should use these techniques in a very somber manner such that the application areas of quantitative finance using the techniques which we learned can be utilized in the best possible way to garner the overall the in-depth knowledge a person has in trying to utilize these quantitative techniques in finance. And I am sure that people who have the background, who have the knowledge, who have the sophistication, who have the knowledge of the society can definitely use quantitative finance in a very big way in trying to make their mark in this exciting field, which you are going to see in years to come. And I am sure it will be a very exciting learning tool for all the participants who will take quantitative finance as a subject in years to come. Thank you, and I wish all the participants all the best and best of luck for the programs they will take. Thank you.